Hello everybody, I'm Alexey Krabrov, the organizer of SF Scala, and here we are back on location at TradeShift. It's a great startup using Arca and Scala and Java. And we have a great talk today by Bill Venners, the creator of ScalaTest. And last time Bill gave a talk, it was about Scalactic. Right, so I think it's been a while. So maybe Bill will welcome you and ask you for an update. What happened since then?
Well, this talk will have a little Scalactic in there too, but this talk will be about property-based testing in general, but we are adding a generator to ScalaTest 3.1, so I'm going to talk about ScalaCheck and our generator that's coming and how they're different, mostly.
Oh, this is really cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Maybe you can talk a little bit what you've been doing generally since then, right? Well,
we do mostly consulting, and we did this. I actually wrote the generator over 2 years ago, about 95%, but it was not documented yet. And I always document everything before I release it. I have this rule. I think that helps me find places that aren't simple enough. Is like if I go to document it and I can't figure out how to explain it, then I'm like, okay, maybe this is just too complicated. So it helps me actually to have that rule to keep things simpler, just because it forces me to explain it before I release it. And there's a few, now that I'm going through it, even prepping for this talk, I'm like, oh, that doesn't work yet, so I actually implemented something just for the demo, and then we'll have to fill that in before we release it. But that's basically 2 years ago we got a contract that I was working full-time at, and that just took all the time away, and we just never really got around to it again until now. So that's what we do. Artima is my company. We do consulting and training, and publish a few Scala books, and open source. We do ScalaTest, and Scalactic. Yeah.
Yes, and I'm wondering with Scala 3.
Yes.
Is a rewrite or a new edition in the offing
of ScalaTest?
Of Scala book.
Of Scala book, yes. So for Scala book, there's a 4th edition coming soon. I don't want to do another printing of the 3rd, so that's how it depends on how fast those sell. I shouldn't have said that, and I just, what's that called? Osborned myself. But
yes. We'll have editing.
Yeah, 4th edition is for 2.13. So we're working on that, and someone helped us with basically the collections library is what's the big change in 2.13. And so, we had like 4 collections chapters, so that was a major surgery.
Wow.
And Dottie is Martin Odersky, his compiler that he's been working on for 4 years, his group at EPFL, and it's open source, so the community is working on it with him. That's where he's tried a lot of ideas that he has in mind for a potential future Scala, which they decided is Scala 3.
Yes.
Not everything that's getting merged into Dottie will necessarily get into Scala 3, because all those things have to go through the SIP process. And it's, but like the 2.13 collections revamp is Dottie's collections library. So when you go from Scala 2 to Scala 3, if you so choose to do that, the collection shouldn't change. That should be the same, right? So you're going to have to go through that pain, to the extent it's pain, from 2.12 to 2.13. So then we want to do a whole new, like all these additions were just, okay, let's tweak it for the next release of Scala. But this is a big change, and I think it's a good time to change the book and really kind of, it's a whole rewrite then, is what we have in mind for Scala 3. Right. But we haven't started that yet, other than like deciding that's what we want to do. The book's been around for 10 years. It's kind of a, it's sort of established. So you can't change it too much. It's already kind of a classic to some extent. But for Scala 3, you can change it. That's what I was thinking.
Interesting.
Scala 3.
Yeah, I just realized basically that Scala 3 will be real when there is a Bill Venners book on it, right?
Okay.
Because we kind of Scala for me materialized through the staircase book.
Oh, okay.
Right. So I guess, and I think there is a pattern that things kind of exist commonly in the community when they get into ScalaTest, right? Like,
That's right.
right? It's kind of
Yes.
right. It's like you kind of take kind of the far out things and you kind of ground them, right? And then right, and I think that can be a heuristic. Right? Like I believe
yeah,
Scala
that's
3 is
interesting.
mainstream when there is a Scala book edition on it.
And ScalaTest, we're porting it to Dotty. So we are in 3.1. We're going to drop support for 2.10 finally. And we're going to drop support for Java 6 and 2.11. So 2.12 requires Java 8. 2.11 does not, but we're only going to, if you really want to use 2.11 on Java 6, you can still use the 3.0 series. We'll still update that if need be. But that's where we're kind of moving on. So we're dropping some, our test matrix is really big because we have JavaScript and some native and you know, all these versions to 10, to 11, to 12, and 2.13 milestone releases. So we're going to drop 2.10, Java 6 to 11, and then we're going to add Dotty. So we have JavaScript and some Scala native to the extent that works, and the Dotty. So the main problem with Dotty was the macros, because we have lots of macros, and those are completely different in Scala 3 or in Dotty. So we're currently working on that.
So let's make a wild guess. When do you think the Dotty edition will appear?
Of ScalaTest?
Of Scala book.
Oh, Scala book. Oh, I don't know. But what I would do is start it, and once I start it, is make a preprint early on, probably, so that people can kind of help it, and we can all kind of figure it out together, like we did for the original Scala. That book was out in preprint form, which is like it's not finished, but you can buy the ebook and you can actually make comments. We had this little app, Yeah, and there's a little app you can make a comment. There was all kinds of great suggestions for people, so that's what I'd like to. That really helped us make it good, and it's a different book than the Scala 2 book essentially. So so I don't know. I have to finish the 4th edition first, and then I want to start on the Dotty book, because that's going to take a few years.
Do you think
And it'll take Dotty a few more
4
years.
years?
No, I think it'd be nice that it comes out. Like I'd like the 4th edition to come out when 2.13 comes out, a 5th edition to come out when 2.14 comes out. Maybe there's not going to be a 2.15. Maybe that'll be Scala 3. That's when I'd like the other one to come out.
Okay.
Which would be nice, just so it keeps up to date. We actually did get the 3rd edition out when 2.12, slightly before 2.12's release.
Well, that's great. Yeah, I mean, like, it's still my recommendation to everybody learning Scala.
Oh, that's nice.
To
Thanks.
get this. And I like to read it. And I have the PDF as well, right? The PDF is beautifully cross-linked.
Yep.
So that was really cool. Cool. So, and kind of, so I mean, ScalaTest is a major project. Like, what else is kind of tickling your interest? I remember you were doing genomics at some point before, right?
Right, yeah.
A while ago. So, like, is there any kind of interesting application you're seeing in the wild of Scala, like you're working on in a consulting
Well,
work?
actually, you know what comes to mind is I'm also the community rep, one of them on the advisory board of the Scala Center,
That's
and
right.
people don't complain. So I started doing, what did I call them? I forget what I call the thing, but basically going in to companies and just kind of talking about what's coming in Dotty and then asking for their feedback. So basically, I want to hear them complain. What are your pain points?
Right.
So it's like a brown bag lunch.
Right.
And that actually works, and I feel a little bit like a Scala psychologist, right, or psychiatrist. You get on the couch, and I say, "So what is your pain point? So how does that syntax make you feel?" And you can go. It's kind of useful because they can see what's coming, and they can give input. This is interesting. That they don't like that, or that's not worth the trouble, or whatever. So I think that's working really nicely. I'm actually getting input now.
Do you accept new patients?
Yeah, yeah. That's something. I mean, I just do that for. It's like volunteer. Well, all this open source is kind of like volunteer work.
Can the company invite you to a brown bag lunch?
Yeah, I can do a
and
brown
take
bag
the
lunch.
pulse.
Yep.
Cool.
Well, I would take. So the thing I try to do to make it worth their while is talk about what's coming, and then they can kind of see all the features that are coming, and that's interesting for a brown bag lunch, right? Because you have to have lunch anyway.
That's right.
But what I try to do is like, and it's sometimes like extracting teeth. It's like, well, how, do you care? I mean, for what you do here.
Right.
Is that feature added to a programming language that you're using for whatever you're using for? Does it matter?
Right.
I mean, really, that's what I ask, and then it's kind of interesting what comes back. So
Are they also scared
for me.
about the
I can
migration?
bring that back to the Scala Center. Well, I am. I am because I don't, I saw what happened with Python. I used to have people in the software community have blogs on Artima. They're still sitting there.
Yes.
So Guido van Rossum was talking about he's like, going to just not worry about breaking things in Python 3 in his blog. And then it came out, it was nicer, but I think it was hard for people to upgrade for for like a decade. It was like difficult. I think Scala has an advantage because we have types.
Yes.
So that's like, you'll get a type error compile time.
Right.
But man, if you don't get a type error, that's just, if it's not safe to upgrade, you're like worried, the implicit resolution changed, so what does that mean? My production code is going to be something different.
Right, and all the tricks.
That's very scary, right?
Yeah.
So I'm really worried about that. So that's been my main, I'm like a broken record at the advisory board meetings. It's like, that's the thing I usually talk about. It's like, got to be careful how you migrate and
right.
But
and what's the general? Because I was a member of that from Nitro.
Oh, that's right. I
Right,
remember
when
that.
we were in the founding group, and I remember that Tim Perret, to every improvement proposal, he was kind of downloading and saying, "Let's make sure the migration
that's right.
goes smoothly."
He didn't like the if changing the way if looks. Like if open parens expression else expression. There was a proposal, a SIP, to say if don't need parens, then expression else expression. It's just cosmetic.
Yes.
But I think it makes the language more regular, as Martin would say, and I like it. But it's like, is that worth it?
Right.
He was quite down on that. He didn't like that one.
Yeah.
And then it got rejected by the SIP. I mean, I don't remember that happening, but I saw it's like rejected. So then somehow it was in Dotty, so it actually is in Dotty. So again, it's one of the things that may not get into Scala. That was already rejected. But Dotty has that form of then. You can, if then. Else.
Yeah, but I remember, I think the major kind of focus then in terms of pragmatic effort was like, let's, instead of beautifying Scala for Spark, which was out of requests, let's make it better, right? Like, let's focus on the fact that there is so much investment in Scala too.
Yeah.
Right, and there are all these companies like Verizon which have enormous code bases, right, and people kind of run production code. So I think the idea was like, let's make sure that that's not being disrupted. And all these companies that are represented on Scala Center, they have this investment. So do you think they will kind of put the brakes and make sure, like, in my mind, that's kind of a sufficient group of people who have enough investment into code bases, like millions of lines of Scala probably, among all of them?
I think it's inevitable there. I mean, Martin cares about it too. Everybody cares about it. This is not just there's a lot of people using this stuff, so you can't, you just have to, like for example, ScalaTest, the way I feel now is I got to keep it stable. I want to fix, I'll add a few things, but it's already big enough. Too big, maybe, but maybe it's just right. If I add too much more, then it'll be like, oh, now it's way too much. And it just needs to, there's ways I can, if it's like a modest improvement that takes a lot of user changes, then it's just not worth it. Just keep it stable. It's like a utility.
Right.
And it just that's what I'm going to try to do with ScalaTest. And I think Scala has become a utility, and you can't just change it.
Right.
So you have to, what I like about what the community does is we care about making things better, but we also have to make sure we care about how you get people, to the new, better place. Carefully.
Yes.
So that's.
I have pretty good hopes. I like the way Scala Center works. I'm actually very glad you're the committee representative. So please hold office hours.
Okay.
If you'd like to have, we can do office hours at SF Scala.
Sure.
We can announce them, and you can receive visitors and check the Scala pulse and stuff like that. You said that you maintain this matrix and you have Scala.js support.
Yep.
And you have Scala native support.
Yep.
So I'm curious, is it indicative? ScalaTest in a way then can be measured, like a measure how much adoption of these things is happening.
Yeah.
So do you see how much traction do you have in Scala.js and Scala native from the ScalaTest side?
So ScalaTest wasn't the first framework on Scala.js,
right?
And so there's always first mover advantage, right? So I think that it probably has less market share in Scala.js.
There is a small test framework from
microtest is what he spells it with a U, but he means just like a micro.
Right.
So I don't know. I mean, what I think is one of the main ways people use Scala.js is they can share code between the server side and the client side in a browser, and that's sort of like you do that. That's sort of a claim to Node.js, right? You can have JavaScript on both sides. So here you have Scala on both sides. And then if you have shared code, like classes you serialize back and forth or something, if you have tests for those, it's nice if you could share those on both sides. So I think it just kind of depends on what you're using. But it's a small, I mean, the main way Scala is used is the JVM still.
Yes.
JS makes sense for people who are using the JVM who also have a, they're using Scala in the JVM, they also have a web client mostly. And native isn't really ready yet, and neither is Dotty. I mean, like every night it's something else doesn't work, and so we have to get that fixed. And so it's not, it's still under development for sure. And they're even figuring things out, they're still deciding how to do things. The other thing, I mean, you asked me the other things I'm interested in. I'm doing a lot of reading about type theory, and trying to understand dependent types and how people do proofs and those languages like that. Because, like what I'll show tonight, the way you express a property-based test is with a statement of logic, predicate logic, and that's also the same way you would make a claim about something that you would then prove like the mathematical way with a mathematical proof. So it's the same input from a property-based test to proof. So that's the other thing I'm kind of trying to understand better.
Interesting.
Lately.
When you understand it, give a talk about it.
Okay. Sure. All right.
And I noticed that, I'm very happy that you are back with training. So you are doing, and it sounds very exciting. It sounds like a Scala retreat.
Yep.
So can you tell us a little bit about that?
I hadn't done public workshops in a long time, many years, and I decided to try it again, but decided to make it more fun and more effective maybe, because just do it in a beautiful place, essentially. It's just a Scala workshop. It's fundamentals, you learn Scala without knowing it before, or advanced, you've been using Scala for a while and you want to polish, and learn more about the advanced stuff. And then we have an effective Scala course also. So they're just our main, our usual Scala courses that we do in-house, but public, instead of just like finding these training centers that are fine, we go where we can go hiking and then have conversations on the hikes. And so far I haven't ventured too far out. We have two over coming in March in the East Bay, and one in Southern California. But there's some other parts of the world that are actually quite nice. We'll see. But that's kind of, there was a guy that did cruises, like conferences on cruises. Did you ever hear about those beach cruises? That worked for him for a while until he, I don't know, either it didn't work or he retired or something. I haven't heard in a long time. Yeah. He got thrown overboard. I don't know what happened. But I just thought, well, why not? It's education. It's our normal course, but it's in a nice place.
It sounds really interesting. So San Damiano, what is it like?
Where?
I've not been there. You said, so it's at San Damiano?
Yeah, San Damiano is a retreat center, it's called, and it's a Franciscan, it's like a Catholic, it's like a part of the Catholic Church or something, I guess. I'm not sure what it is. But there's monks there.
Okay.
And so it's very peaceful.
Interesting.
And it's just, like it's in the hills up there. It's very quiet and beautiful, and you can go hiking. It's right. You can go up the hill to, what's the name of it? I'm blanking. Las Trampas Open Space Preserve and hike up there. So that's what we do when we're there.
So how's it structured? Are you starting out at the keyboard? Do you walk and talk?
We walk after lunch. We'll take a hike after lunch.
Okay.
If it's like the one time we did one, there was during the smoke. Remember the campfire?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was dangerous to be outside, so we didn't do much hiking on that one.
Yeah, that was around Scale by the Bay. And we were hiding inside Twitter.
Yep.
So that was a tough time actually in the beginning.
Yeah, that was tough.
Yeah.
But the weather's nice now. And
they can do it in March.
We're going to do it in March, yeah.
So it will be warmer.
And it shouldn't be raining, but it might be. But
so how does it look like?
You know.
Like so you do are you in the front of the group and you're shouting? How does it look like?
We do usually classroom style where people are sitting there and for fundamentals. It's not really more projects. People work on their own. So
but when you walk, like if you
when we walk, no, people just randomly walk,
So you're not
they talk to each other.
lecturing.
Basically, no, not on the walk. People talk to each other and they learn from each other and come from different companies. That's the other thing is that's different between an in-house training you get in your company and going to a public event is you'll meet people from other places and get different inputs, you know.
That sounds
different
exciting to me.
cultures.
Like, I'd really like to join one of these walks because, you know, I read history,
Yeah.
and so there was this Greek school of peripatetics. So peripatetics actually believed in learning while walking.
While walking. Oh,
So
okay.
that was the whole school, right? So the philosophers they would actually lecture
Yeah.
during the walk.
Oh, that's going
Right.
to be tough to do with a laptop.
Yeah,
Huh.
so it probably, I mean, that was about philosophical concepts, right? So they
But,
didn't need a
I
laptop.
mean, there's a lot of philosophical concepts about software, right? So
Right.
there's a lot of
Interesting.
interesting conversations that happen on the hikes. And I think the exercise and the views that stimulate that was part of what I wanted to, you know, mix into the education.
Yeah, I find it
So-
super exciting. So, like, you know, I hope to check it out.
Well, yeah, you should come on the hike at least.
Yes.
You're welcome to come
Good
on
for
the hike.
health.
Yeah.
So we have the information on the meetup,
Yep.
right? So, you know, if you guys are interested in joining, we have it all in Bill's talk announcement, and check out artima.com.
Yep.
Cool. Well, they're, you know, very grateful for you to coming down and giving us the news, and looking forward to your talk.
All right. Thanks,
There you
Alexi.